man down, bullies, blow the man down.
To me way, blow the man down.
Blow the man down, bullies.
I'm Paul Bennett at Downeast Thunder Creations here in Millbridge, Maine. We're located along Maine's Bold Coast, not very far from the U.S.-Canadian border. What you're looking at is the stand that I built for my midi lathe, wood lathe. And I built that several years ago, and I built it before I was making any videos for YouTube. I did take several pictures of the assembly step by step, just still photographs, and I put them together into a slideshow, one of the first videos that I had posted on YouTube when I started doing that. I'll put a link in the video description below. And this is all solid wood, it's just dimensional lumber. A bunch of, I guess, 2x8s, 2x10, something like that. 2x6s. And I put them all together, laminating them together, making them very thick and heavy, because I wanted a rock solid stand for the lathe so I wouldn't get a lot of vibration. And right now it rocks. It's not sitting flat on the floor, but it is actually flat itself, but my concrete floor is quite unlevel. We didn't do a very good job when we were pouring the concrete. So that means it has to be shimmed so it doesn't move around. Now my lathe was mounted on this. If you recall a few videos back, I overhauled my lathe and replaced all the bearings. And so I took the lathe off this, and this remained buried in a corner of the shop, and I just dug it out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it upside down, and I'm going to put some casters on it so I can put the lathe back on, and I'll be able to move the lathe around the shop so I can put it out of the way when I'm not using it and put it in a comfortable area when I do need it. It may not look it, but this is very heavy. Recently, prices have really increased on just about everything, including these casters. These would be pretty cheap at Harbor Freight, not so cheap anymore though. I mean, that's where I bought them, but the prices were pretty much out of control, I think, in my own opinion. But I had to have them, and I didn't have any others kicking around. I usually do, but not this time. I've got them all used up. That worked. So we'll get this in position. I think that's where I want it. These are 3-inch casters. They don't have a very high load rating because these are one of the cheapest that they had. They did have 3-inch casters with higher load ratings, but this lathe doesn't really weigh that much. Really, all the weight is in the stand here, but it's still okay. Still within the weight capacity of these casters, but they do look pretty cheesy, I have to say. I'd like to have more substantial ones. Alright, 1 caster down, 3 more to go. I won't make you suffer through that. Okay, I have all the casters in place. I just have to turn it right side up. I already set the brakes on the wheel so that they won't try to turn when I'm rotating this and trying to get the stand upright. Yeah, that wasn't too bad. They still have to Wherever I place this, I might have to shim it though. This is just too lumpy right here, too uneven. Can't do a very good job with the lathe if it's like that. Okay, it's time to get this lathe back into position. Get it bolted up. Now, either this has gotten a lot heavier or I'm just getting a whole lot older. Since this was already mounted, I already have holes here in the wood where the leg screws go. So I just line it up with those. And I have the same leg screws for holding it before. I can just put right back in. And I'm not going to ask you to sit through all this while I put the screws back in. That's pretty boring to watch. I'll be back in a moment. The lathe is now mounted solidly to the stand. And again, wherever I put it, it may be flat and solid. It might wiggle like this because of an uneven floor and it has to be shimmed. But at least it's mobile. I can move it to different parts of the shop. The only drawback now though is that because of the casters, this lathe is now higher. I originally designed this stand so the lathe would be at a comfortable height for me when I'm working on it. And that would be right about where my elbow is. See, it's just a few inches lower than this, which is where it stood when the stand just was sitting flat on the floor. So what I'll have to do to compensate is to make a small, maybe a little step stool a few inches high where I can stand on while I'm working on the lathe. But that's only for long projects. If I'm just doing something, just a little short, small thing to turn that's quick, only a few minutes, I really don't need it. But when I'm doing a larger project, and I'm going to be here at the lathe for hours on end because I'm making a number of items, repetitive items, just making one after the other, I want to be standing at a comfortable height. But making a small step stool of that height, just a few inches high, isn't a big deal. And so it's a good trade-off, I think. And at least I'll get more use out of the lathe now. Otherwise it would be buried in the corner of the shop and there's so much stuff in here, it's hard to get to when you do need it and you just end up not doing the project. One other thing I can do now is I can make a few tool holders to hang mounted right here on the bench so that my lathe cutting tools, my gouges, my accessories, chucks and things can all fit in easy reach, nice out in the open, and so I think I'm going to do that, future project. So I call this good.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor?